Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host, coming to you from a very toasty Prim, Nevada. I don't know what temperature it is here. It's my dash, because my truck's running, I don't think the APU can keep up with the heat. But yeah, the dash says 124 degrees. I know it's not that hot out. But it's probably around 106, 107. If you don't know where Prim is, it's that very first exit when you come into Nevada from California. So California's sort of, that way. So anyway, today is what's today? 25th, I think. Yeah, Tuesday the 25th. Couple of people of note were born on this day. Walter Payton, Sweetness, my favorite, and you know, I'm a big Buffalo Bills fan, but Walter Payton is my favorite player ever. He went to Jackson State, so he was an HBCU guy, just a phenomenal athlete. Died too young of liver disease, cancer, I think, but just a great player. Number 34 for the Bears, Hall of Famer. Also born on this day, I think in 1916, was Emmett Till. If you don't know who Emmett Till is, Emmett was a boy who was, turns out, he was a black kid, falsely accused by a white woman down in the South of like whistling at her, and he was basically murdered by this group of white people, and his death and funeral was a big spark in the civil rights movement. So Emmett Till was born on this day. I think they said he would have been 89 today, maybe. I can't remember. Anyway, and also on this day, I don't know if you remember this, but an Air France Concord that was taken off from Paris. But honestly, I know both airports in Paris, although Charles de Gaulle is the one that's most often used. That's their airport symbol, CDG. But there was also another airport back in the day called Orly, O-R-L-Y. But I think the Concorde was taken off from Charles de Gaulle, and it caught a piece of like rubber. I think it was rubber from a previous plane landing where they like popped a tire, and it got up into the engine somehow, and it caught the plane on fire, and plane crashed, killed like 109 people on the plane and like 4 more on the ground. It was a big deal, and that was kind of the beginning of the end of the Concorde flying transatlantic flights for Air France and British Airways. So that's a little wrap up of history. What's up, BB? Yeah, it's hot out. It's hot big time, even though you don't have much fur. You'd probably burn your feet to go out there right now. So we actually bought, several years ago, we bought some like snow boots / heat boots, but B kind of freaked. She picked her feet up like really high, like they were stuck to the ground. It was kind of funny to watch, wasn't it, Missy? But anyway, so I want to talk about the heat. I did a video a year ago about surviving the heat, and the heat is not a joke. And this year it's even hotter than it was last year. Any machine can break down in the kind of temperatures we've been experiencing in parts of the U.S., but it's also spreading out. That heat dome. You got to carry fluids like for yourself, right? Like obviously your truck. And if you notice your engine overheating or whatever, roll the windows down and crank on the heater, and then get it checked out. But I came by a Valley of Fire today, which is an area out by Lake Mead, and 2 women were found dead out there the other day that were hiking. If you have to go any length of time in the kind of heat that the desert Southwest has been experiencing, if you're exposed to the sun, you don't have fluids, including electrolytes, it can turn out really bad. I mean, people are dropping dead from like doing an activity, maybe not that strenuous, but the heat is, even though it's kind of like in your face, by the time you realize that it's having this super detrimental effect on your health, it may already be too late. It's just like extremes of cold, right? It sneaks up on you. Don't become a victim. If you break down, flag somebody down, right? Because if you're with crime or any other major, if a driver was trying to flag me down, I will stop. I don't stop just because somebody's got their triangles out, because there's not much I can do for them. But if somebody's trying to flag me down, I'm going to pull over. If you end up on the side of the road in, Southern Cal, Arizona, Texas, Nevada, even up in Utah, it's like in the hundreds today. If you're in a remote area and it's that kind of weather and you don't have like AC or some shade to be in, and you don't have fluids, flag somebody down, right? And even maybe call 911, because I know in some states in the wintertime, if somebody's on the side of the road, I remember a few years ago when it was like insanely cold in the Midwest, the Nebraska State Police would stop for any vehicle on the side of the road just to check on the occupants. So please don't become a victim. Take it easy in the heat. Even if you're in really good shape, the heat is nothing to mess with. And we're getting to points where we're testing the limits of human endurance on this stuff. And farm workers have died, and it's all sorts of people out just recreating. I mean, that always happens in the desert in the summertime anyway, but it just seems like this year it's just been really significant. So enough about that. So I've been given some thought to retirement, and I wanted to share a couple of thoughts, because I always read about stuff like that, in part because at some point I want to retire, and that word means different things to different people. I don't know that there's ever going to come a time until I'm quite near death, if I die a natural death, that I won't be doing something, whether it's going to historic sites, or volunteering, or riding my bike, or whatever, right? Keeping busy. Because I think if you keep moving, it keeps you alive longer. My dad was 87 when he died, but he worked until he was in his 80s. Like, I think part of it was boredom, but he worked. And he didn't have a super strenuous job. Like, he had a job at some gated community in Florida where he drove around in a golf cart and waved to people and just made sure no riffraff came in the country club, But it was something that got him out of bed in the morning, and that's the whole idea, But retirement means different things to different people. But when you retire, right, you're gonna want to be prepared for it. So this message is for anybody, but I'm going to talk a little bit about trucking, and how you can retire comfortably. Years ago I worked as a financial advisor, so I had my securities licenses, including a 724, which is a general securities principal. I've been a compliance officer at a hedge fund. I helped a lot of people with investment and investment ideas. And one of the things that I learned, and probably more important than, individual, like, oh, buy this stock and buy this mutual fund or buy this REIT or whatever, is philosophy of investing. And I had a client, I think I probably mentioned him before. He was like, he had legit like a little over $1 million in cash or marketable securities, and that included cash and like life insurance policies and stuff. But he had 2 Pontiac Grand Ams that were paid off, and he had a very modest rancher that was paid off. But all this guy did, and I say all he did, I mean, it was certainly an important job, especially back in the day. He was a telephone guy. He's the guy that went to people's houses and installed telephones. Oh, you need a second phone upstairs? Yeah, this was the guy that did it. And he worked for the phone company, and I'm pretty sure he was probably a union guy back in the day. But what he really was a little bit of a student of the markets, and he was frugal, not impoverished frugal, right? Like, he and his wife had 3 kids. They didn't forego having children to save money. He had cars that worked. He didn't walk everywhere. He wasn't one of those people. He wasn't the guy that lived in the YMCA and left somebody $100,000. But this guy had a pretty substantial portfolio, and he understood it all. And, he didn't have a college education. He didn't have a degree in finance. But he followed a few simple steps. And one of them, of course, was some frugality. Not, total denial. Not like the people that do FIRE, that I've talked about before. But, I went by this... I think a lot about consumption, right? And I certainly have owned lots of things, stuff, right? But not probably now more than ever, keeping up with the Joneses is not a great way to live. Because, everybody talks about keeping up with the Joneses, but who are the Joneses trying to keep up with? It can become a death spiral. And I watched this dude drive by me today, and he had a big honking pickup truck that was towing a giant 5th wheel travel trailer, and attached to the back of the travel trailer was, wait for it, no, not just a bass boat, no, a Jeep, like a Jeep, Rubicon, that had all sorts of 4-wheeling stuff attached to it, on the roof, on the back. So I'm doing the math, right, real quick in my head, and I'm like, there's like $200,000 worth of depreciating assets that this dude's booking down the road with. And it's not really my business what somebody buys, except for me. But, my question is, what's the point of all that? Now, who knows? Maybe this guy's a multi-millionaire and he's got just cash laying around, right? But most of us aren't. And if we're driving a truck, even if you're making 6 figures, trust me when I say this, it's really easy to go through 6 figures when you make that. I've been in that life, and I've had expensive things, and I've gone on expensive vacations and eating at restaurants constantly. I mean, and just done all sorts of luxury things, right? So I certainly have less to show for my work over the years than I otherwise would. Now, my situation's different than a lot of people's because I have a pension from the government. And the pension that I paid 0 into. I didn't ever pay a dime into it. So it's almost like it's found money, right? I had a job for around 21 years. And then bam, they just start paying me for the rest of my life. But I still don't rely just on that. The other thing I've done that I do think is a good idea is I've paid into Social Security. I'm fully paid in to Social Security. And I know, I've talked about this before. A lot of people are like, oh, it's a Ponzi scheme, whatever. Social Security has been paying people since the day that it became law in the 1930s, right? To my knowledge, Social Security has never missed a payment to anybody. And, I just don't see that ever happening unless the U.S. government collapses. Now, I will say no republic in the history of the world has ever reached 300 years of age. So we might be getting towards the tail end of this. But since, for like 90 years almost, Social Security is paid every month. I am hopeful that it will continue to do that. I think it will for me. And honestly, I think it will for other people if people continue to work. That could be the self-fulfilling prophecy. People are like, well, I'm not going to work because Social Security's not going to be there, and then it isn't. And they're like, see, I told you. But it won't be because Social Security was like a bad idea. It'll be because the factors that supported it all these decades went away. But it's kind of no different than, I don't know if you saw the video of this dude who was just freaking at a Yellow trucking facility about his pension. And I predicted that there would be a strike at Yellow and that Yellow would go bankrupt. I still, that didn't happen, so that's good. But what did happen is Yellow made a $50 million payment to the Central States Pension Fund, which only covered the medical benefits for their folks. So they're still in arrears on the pension payments. And the thing is, right, like, I have a pension, and like I said, I didn't pay a dime into it. It is from the federal government too. So again, as long as the federal government's around, I think I'm going to have my pension. I almost think they would be afraid to like not pay military pensioners their money. Because I think that would be like the beginning of the end, right? Because then what military people would stick around? So I am relying on those things. But so anyway, if any money that you control is good for you, any money that you don't control, that you're relying on somebody else for, that might not be so good. Now, certainly my military pension, I don't control, but I look at the history of it. Now, pensions from companies, one of the big problems we have in this country, I think, is that the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation is not a federal mandate. And I think I've mentioned this before. The FDIC that guarantees deposits in banks, that's mandated. Money must go into it. But these pension funds do not have to pay into the Guarantee Corporation, which would backstop private pensions. And by the way, it looks like UPS has reached a deal with their folks. Again, I still don't know what's going to happen with Yellow. But the reason that medical thing matters is, and this is another thing that I've recently, kind of been exposed to. And one of the key factors to a comfortable retirement, when I say comfortable, I mean materially comfortable, meaning people have enough money to get through retirement, right? Because a big concern is always outliving your assets, right? One of the biggest factors of comfort in retirement is your health. And that's something that, believe it or not, is almost free to help with your retirement. And what I mean by that is this. If you don't take care of your physical health, it is a guarantee that you are going to, when you can no longer work, because some people quit working not because they don't want to work, but because they can't physically do it. And if you have a job like being a truck driver, I mean, I mean, honestly, I saw this dude get out of a truck today, and by the way, he was not like portly or anything, but he looked like he was straight out of Skid Row. He long gray hair, just kind of hunched over, barely walking to the truck stop. Now, I don't know why he's still driving. Maybe that's the only thing that he enjoys. But it could be that he just can't afford to retire or whatever. But here's the thing. When you do quit working, right, you want to have quality of life. It's not a retirement when you're homebound. You can't do anything with all that free time, and you're literally sitting around waiting to die, right? Because even people that are very wealthy, if they have chronic health problems or serious health problems, that is going to just suck their retirement funds dry. Because even with Medicare and Medicare supplemental plans, a lot of people are scrimping on medicine that they need and treatment that they need. And even if money's not an object, even if you have really good health care, maybe you were a union guy, who wants to go to the doctor all the time? I mean, I go to the doctor so infrequently that I couldn't, I just don't want to go to the doctor for any reason. I do when my family badgers me into it, but I don't want to go to the doctor for any reason. I'm 60. I don't want to go to the doctor. If I don't, I will, because I do believe in some preventative care, but I do things every day to try to help my health out, so that in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, I'm not just, sitting in front of a TV, because I can't do anything else. And you say, well, Terry, what are you going to be doing when you're 90? I don't know, but I want to have that option. I saw a dude, I think he's 93, he just summited Half Dome over at Yosemite. I've never summited Half Dome. But I've been up some 14ers in Colorado, and I'd like to do a few more. If it happens, it happens. But, Ragbri started this week in Iowa. My wife and I are going to ride it next year, I think. I want to do those things. I don't feel old. I joke about being old. I don't feel old, but I want to be comfortable doing my job. So taking care of your health is essential. And it saves you money. If you smoke and you quit smoking and just first of all, if you realize how much you spend on it, that might help you want to quit. Because I knew a guy in the Navy, and this is years ago, and by the way, military guys used to be able to get tobacco products really subsidized. But he was like, yeah, man. He's like, yeah, Chief, I quit smoking. I'm like, oh, cool. Why'd you do that? Because everybody has different reasons and motivations. He said, I got to adding it up. I was spending like $60 a month on it. I was like, yeah, that's a little bit of change, man. I said, it's like $720 a year. He's like, yeah, I know. And so I said, well, maybe you could save that money. I don't know what he did, but he understood the economic impact as a guy in his 20s. So I'm guessing anybody that smokes regularly is spending way more than $60 a month. Little things add up. And, how, what you invest in and how you invest, I recommend conservative approaches, but, I will say this, don't go chasing stuff like Bitcoin or, you hear stories about the people that invest and, they make like a gazillion dollars because then the company becomes Microsoft. But let me say this, the people, because I've been around those people, the people that are investing in like the next Tesla or in the next Microsoft or the next Apple, they already have plenty of money most of the time. It's not somebody that's like, all right, Bill, what's your name, Bill? Bill Gates? All right, bruh, here's my last 50, man. Just get me rich. And then that guy turns it into like $500,000. That's not how it happens. I can guarantee you that. So what I'm saying is that the person who says, okay, I quit smoking, $60 a month, I'm going to put into a Roth IRA when they're 25, they're going to be happy with that decision when they're my age. Guaranteed. The person who says, hey, I'm going to drive I was going to buy a new car, but the payment was going to be $730 a month. So I'm going to drive this car for 2 more years, but I'm going to put that $730 into a savings account, or I'm going to put it into an S&P 500 index fund. They're going to be happy they did that, because in 2 years, the car that they were going to buy would have been worth half what they paid for it, because it's a depreciating asset. But that's $720 a month going into stock mutual funds is going to be worth, it might be worth less, but it's still got it's still got its underlying value. And so anyway, I just want to share this because I hope people change their philosophies. I read an article and people were like talking about Warren Buffett and stuff, but here's the thing. Warren Buffett's an exceedingly rich guy, but he didn't start out at the bottom. Don't let anybody kid you, okay? Warren Buffett's a really smart guy, but his father was a congressman. He went to 2 Ivy League schools, including getting his MBA at Columbia. He didn't start out at the bottom, okay? He built something huge. Don't get me wrong, he's a very bright man, but he didn't start out at the bottom. But if you have to start out at the bottom, there are ways to do it and still turn out like the guy that was my client, because I guarantee he did start out at the bottom. And he had, like I said, paid off house, paid off cars, and over $1 million in cash and, marketable securities. So anyway, I know this isn't really trucking related, but I feel like there's a lot of people in our industry that are just, they got some giant car crushing pickup truck. They're making good money, but like the saying says, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. And the more you keep now, the more you'll have later, when you have time to really enjoy it and do all those things that you want to do now. Don't work for 40, 50 years and have nothing to show for it, because then it's like, what did you come here for? What was your purpose on earth? To just come, grow, turn 18 and just work till you died? I mean, I can't believe that's why any of us are here. And I can't believe anybody thinks, oh yeah, that's good enough. A lot of people, that's what ends up happening, but it's not because they thought it was good enough, it's because they didn't prepare. And preparing doesn't mean there's not going to be misfortune. But people that prepare are going to be better able to handle misfortune. And life's a crapshoot. You never know what you're going to roll, but being prepared can make things easier. So anyway, thanks for hanging out. Be careful out there in the heat or on the road or whatever you're doing. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.